you've had a good story come out on Jerami Grant making his road to the Pistons. I see you got another one coming.
Yeah. You got the wrong message. It was actually supposed to go to. We have a athletic beat writer DM thing. And since you had DM'd me last, and that one's usually up top, it was late after the game, and I hit the wrong button.
That's
But yeah,
great because
isn't
I do my research. I
yeah,
dig deep. I never would have known that was coming, but I can't
yeah,
wait to preview that story a little bit here. But that's the kind of stuff you try to do to set apart the athletics coverage a little bit. Is like a story like that on why Jerami Grant would make this decision. That was honestly one of the big questions of the off season.
yeah,
Denver had just made the Western Conference Finals. He had grown so much there. He seemed like the perfect kind of third, fourth option on a team, given his shooting, given his
yeah.
help defense, all that stuff. But no, he takes the same amount of money, goes to Detroit, becomes pretty much the first option in Detroit. And you dove a little bit into why he made that decision, some of the motivating factors, some of the stuff off the court that would lead him in that direction. So give us a little preview of what we're going to read there.
Is this coming out tomorrow? This pod or today?
This is today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the story's not coming out till tomorrow.
Give us what
But
you can. Give us
yeah,
tease it.
let's just say I had a chance to in this world, this current media world where we're not, it's tough to get one-on-ones with players. I was able to get one with Jerami Grant, and yes, the bigger role, the ability to grow as a player was a motivating factor in coming to Detroit. But I will say that, and while that has been kind of the public push of why he's come here, there's other underlying reasons that he has not yet discussed that will that really motivated his reasoning for coming to Detroit. And yeah, the story that's coming tomorrow, we'll get into those. For me, I think it's a first of its kind in terms of a player admitting for these reasons as why he came to Detroit. I can't think of many who have. I'm being very vague, but I think people will understand when they see it tomorrow.
All right. Well, this is what we're going to do right here. Since I have the keys in front of me, I got the ability to make all this happen. I hope you trust me here. But we're going to cut this part out. We're going to use as a segment tomorrow after the
Okay.
article comes out. And we'll just leave everything else here because the Pistons, Celtics played on Sunday. Celtics got another game tonight. So we'll leave all this stuff. We'll cut this part out and put it on tomorrow. And I'm just curious. I just want to hear this before
Yeah.
everybody else. This is selfish for me. But, what do you get into with him?
Yeah. Like, so, I mean, basketball fans are familiar with how Jeremy was at the forefront of kind of social justice and racial inequality in the bubble. He was the first one to every question that he got. He brought back to Breonna Taylor. And I had heard through the grapevine that part of the reason he wanted to come to Detroit was he wanted to play for black men in leadership positions. And you look at Detroit, Dwayne Casey's the head coach, and Troy Weaver's the GM. And it's no coincidence that Detroit is the blackest city in America. So we dove into that and why that was why having black men in leadership positions was important for him. He's a guy who's been in the league 7 years now and has never played for a black coach.
And is that kind of what the Pistons are building here a little bit in terms of, the leadership structure from Troy Weaver, Dwayne Casey, yeah, he's had a phenomenal run in Toronto, no
Yeah.
championship, but, a guy that you can trust as a head coach, I think has done a good job in a couple different stops now. And then, Jerami Grant, what does he kind of see himself as in terms of a number one option in your conversations with him?
Yeah, I think one thing I asked him is when people saw the news that he would go leave Detroit or leave Denver for Detroit, you could see like the common fan be like, "Oh, he's just chasing stats. Like it's selfish." And I asked him, I'm like, "Why do you think people have that view?" He's like, "I don't think fans can understand it, but players can understand it. Players understand wanting to be the best version of yourself as a player as you can be." Um, and I think fans just look at it as I just walked away from a situation where I would win. And I get it. Like, You only get a short amount of time to play in this craft. And Jerami, you look back at his history, even going back to high school, he's never been considered the best player on his team. In high school, he played with Victor Oladipo, his brother Jarian, and Quinn Cook. In college, he was with CJ Fair, Tyler Ennis. And then, I mean, in the NBA, we all know he's never been considered the best player on his team. So I get it. Like, you only get to play this game for so long. You want to find out what you're made of. You want to find out what you can do. And if you can go and help build a organization back from the ground up and still have and do it in a way that fulfills some of your other objectives as a human and as a man, totally understand it. And I think the story that's going to come out will make a little bit more sense for those who question Jerami's decision, because it's the other part of his decision aside from basketball can't be written into a contract or quantified with minutes logged and shots taken.
Mm-hmm. I love that, and I appreciate you giving us the teaser there. I want to stay on Grant because this isn't a Syracuse podcast, but we're Syracuse adjacent. You know, we started the show in Syracuse. We talk a lot about Syracuse because it's just one of the things I love. It's amazing to see what he's become from those days that you mentioned at Q's, because if you look back at him as a player at Syracuse, probably the third option on that team as well, you know, kind of a slasher, diver, and didn't have the shot that he does now, the dribble that he has now, the passing ability, all these things he's added. Even as a defender, he's completely transformed. As a body, like, you know, his body's transformed as well. Like you wouldn't even recognize him looking at him today and comparing that to what he was at Syracuse. And if you were ranking the Syracuse players since Carmelo Anthony in 2003 that have come out to the NBA, I mean, he's number one by far at this point in terms of what he's done. You know, about 17 shots a game coming into this Detroit-Boston series, shooting 47% coming into the series on that volume was pretty impressive to me. Had a pretty good series, rougher second halves. The first halves were really good in both those games. But what are you seeing from him?
That one possession where you missed 4 threes doesn't help. Was that Friday? I think they got like 4 offensive rebounds or 3, and he like missed all.
Yeah, and he started that. I think he was 4-4 from 3 to start that first game. He was just on fire, and then, you know, and that's kind of what you have there. You got Derrick Rose as a second ball handler, but there's a lot riding on Grant right now, the way Griffin looks.
Yeah.
So, what are you seeing so far from him as that?
But yeah, to your question, what have I seen?
Yeah,
I think one thing I didn't necessarily anticipate coming was for him to create his own shot. I just didn't think he had the handle to do it. But what I've noticed is he is so long, like 1-2 dribbles. He can kind of slime his way through guys. He can step around them, like, and then his arms are so long, he's at the basket immediately. Like, his length kind of nullifies his lack of tight handle. And he's a better ball handler than I anticipated, but he's not I mean, of course, he's not a Kyrie Irving. He's not a Jason Tatum or even a Jaylen Brown handling the rock, but he's so long that he can get past guys. He can jump. Like, he's just perfectly built to get his shot off without having the type of necessarily refined skill that others have. And I think that's been, if you ask Pistons fans, what's really surprised them is his ability to get to the hole in 1 or 2 dribbles from the 3-point line. I think he's finished pretty well. I think a lot of times he's gotten fouled and hasn't really been called, and that maybe comes with more. If you ask Detroit fans, they don't get calls anyway.
Maybe an all-star appearance will do that.
I think that's going to come with for Jerami. Yeah. You don't know how things are called, but yeah, I think that's been the most impressive thing for me, his ability to get to the hole, using not over dribbling. I do think he needs to kick out some. I think his efficiency would be even better if he just a little more kicked it to the corner a little more instead of forcing up a tough shot. But I mean, he's made a good amount of them, so he's getting there. Defensively, he's been doing what he does. But yeah, I think his ability to get to the hole is probably what surprised most people.
So, you know, you grew up in Detroit, probably a Pistons fan growing up. You got a pretty historic franchise there, great players, Wallace, a team that kind of reflects the city to some degree when you look back on some of the championship teams that they've had there. I think one of the interesting things, and I think I heard Bill Simmons talk about this on his podcast yesterday with, talking about the Bills and Stephon Diggs coming in and him having this great season, but, Buffalo, the city, not getting to interact with him in the stadium, even with the great year he's had. So you don't have that direct fan player connection in the stadium. And I see you at these games, empty crowds, of course, in Detroit, probably for most of the season, as Jerami Grant makes his Detroit debut. And you talk a lot about, the connection between him and the city that he's trying to form here. How do you think Detroit fans are going to ultimately connect with him? And how do you think he's going to kind of interact with the city, the fan base, what the Pistons are and what they're building?
It's a good question. I actually so I grew up in a Pistons family. I'm from Flint, which is just an hour and a half. People know Miles Bridges, Flintstones, Monty Morris, JaVale McGee, all from Flint. But I actually grew up a Clippers fan. That was, for some reason, I gravitated towards Sean Livingston and Chris Kaman.
That's a weird one.
Yeah. No, I liked Chris Kaman. Went to Central Michigan, so I got to see him play a lot. And then Sean Livingston, everyone compared him to Magic Johnson. And being a Michigan State guy, I just gravitated toward that.
Yeah.
But I know what the city – I know what the city likes to see. I know what the city appreciates in its basketball teams. And I think the message is clear. I think there are some fans who think that this team's trying to chase the 8th seed again. I don't think those are necessarily the most in tune fans. I would say, it's your casual fan. And that's the fan that's probably most likely to go buy a ticket. But if they're able to compete, that was my question coming into the Boston series. Boston's record wasn't as good as I think the Celtics are. But I was curious if Detroit could play competitive with a team like that. And so we have the full spectrum where they're playing tough against the Clevelands and Minnesotas of the world, but they're also playing tough against the Celtics of the world. And I think if they're able to consistently do that when fans return, I think the city will get behind them because they'll look out there, they'll see 19-year-old Killian Hayes, 20-year-old Sadiq Bey, 20-year-old Sekou Doumbouya, 26-year-old Jerami Grant, 23-year-old Svi Mykhailiuk, 22, 23-year-old Josh Jackson, just a bunch of young guys out there playing hard and giving them something to root for throughout the duration of a game. Isaiah Stewart, who played really well in the 2 games against Boston, I thought another 20-year-old, 19-year-old. It's a far cry from what Pistons fans are used to the last few years, which is the bunch of veterans going for the 8th seed and not much to get behind. It's a different dynamic, and I think fans will be able to see that because if they're able to be competitive versus the good teams, the bad teams, and just give you something to root for the duration of 48 minutes, I think that's just what Detroit fans want, and they want to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think this is the first time in a long time you can kind of see some rays peeking through the cave.